Hello, this is Socially Triggered, and this video is going to be on the political spectrum and relativity and how they kind of correspond. So, for those who don't know, my background was in university. I took physics as my study. My undergrad was actually a physics degree, so I know a little bit about physics, a little bit, and one of the fields that I actually really loved was relativistics and the theory, the theories around that Einstein proposed. And I'm going to explain one kind of concept within physics, but it will make sense in terms of how I see the political spectrum currently. So one thing in physics is the idea of the observer. So if you're sitting in a train, for example, and you're just sitting there, you are under the impression that you're not moving, okay? That you're just sitting there, you're not doing anything, you're just sitting there. But the train could be moving. It could be moving at, let's say, 100 miles per hour. Just it's a fast train, it's moving at 100 miles an hour, and you see another train coming the opposite direction, and it's moving 100 miles an hour. But when, as the observer, you see that other train moving at 200 miles an hour, because it's the combined speeds, okay, that you're seeing. You're seeing it moving very rapidly towards you, even though really it's moving at the same pace as you're moving towards it. So this is called relativity, that we see this relativistic movement. And there's cool things in physics when you get to the speed of light, that as you approach the speed of light, things kind of go a little weird and like time shifts. And there's like some really cool things with when you get to that speed of light situation. But what I really want to focus in on is this whole concept of the observer and how their perspective of the situation might not be as real as if you look at the whole thing. If you're the third person that's not in either train, you're just looking down, you're seeing these two trains moving to each other, then you would observe it very differently. You would say, well, the two trains are just moving towards each other, each at 100 miles per hour, and that's different than that observer. So one of the things that I'm interested in is the whole political shifts that are happening. And I've seen a lot of studies that show that there's used to be the case that if you looked at a Republican and you looked at a Democrat in the United States, you would see that they were fairly similar, pretty much the same 20, 30 years ago. And the only differences were maybe the people on the right were much more religious. They might have some like sort of more traditional beliefs, and those on the left might be a little bit more progressive on those things. But for the most part, there was a lot of overlap between the two groups. Now, it's really hard to say that. The left has really shifted further to the left, and the right, in according to the media, has shifted far to the right. And I actually want to show you through relativity that that is not the case. That actually what has happened is there's been a shift on both sides to the left. And what I'd like to show you is a good example of this. If you asked a religious person on the right uh, uh, whether or not they're pro-gay marriage or pro-LGBT stuff, or if they're pro-abortion or pro some of these more social issues that are really the talking points of the left, you would probably get what you would expect back, like if you go back 40, 50 years, you would see they would say, well, of course, gay marriage is crazy. Abortion is, murder. They'd get the typical right-wing talking points. However, if you do that same question now of right-wing people, you'll find that they will have generally more progressive stances. Maybe they'll be more pro-choice. I mean, there's still going to be a holdout that are going to be anti-abortion. But you'll see a lot more pro-choice within the right-wing side. There's a lot more libertarians now, where they promote the idea that it's your freedom to choose whatever you want to do, and they can be pro choice, and you'll see a lot of those people on the right not being as religious as they used to be. And you'll see that they'll even have things where they'll support the gay and lesbian community or not have an opinion on it even. And that in itself is a shift. That before they might say, well, I remember in your early 80s, if you said, oh, that they're gay, that would be like, wow, that person should go to hell. Like it was that extreme. But that has shifted where a lot of these Christian right or right-wing conservatives are very, who cares? It doesn't matter. They don't really care. Like if you look at Milo Minneapolis or whatever, I can never pronounce his last name. He's a gay conservative. It's like that's pretty crazy. So it's these things there's been a real shift to the left within the right. So what is this thing that we're experiencing? What is this thing where it looks like there's a real shift between the two, where they no longer can you say that left and right are really similar anymore? They really, diverged. And what I would say is it's a relativistic thing. So the right have moved to the left to a certain extent. A lot of the social issues, they've moved to the left. However, the left has moved so far to the left and so rapidly to the extremes of left that that rapid shift and more extreme shift to the left has made them really more polar opposites of the right, even though the right has now become what the left used to be. So it's kind of interesting that, if you're in that left-wing position, right? If you're that person that's on the extreme left, the far, far left, well, you're seeing that this right is moving way over to the right. You're seeing them shift way over. Whereas what's really happening, if you're that third observer, you're seeing, a shift a little bit of the right to the left. And then you're seeing this really extreme shift of the left to an extreme left. And so what happens is there's a bigger gap in between the two groups where they no longer see eye to eye because there's just no overlap anymore. It used to be that, if you asked conservative or liberal on certain issues, they would have some consensus. They would have some agreement. But that is less and less the case nowadays. And it's because of this relativistic thing where the left have shifted so rapidly and so extreme to the left, and the right have sort of moved moderately to the left. And the reason I want to point this out, this whole idea, is I want to say, well, one of the things that they're always paranoid about, and this is the left, the way that they think, is they see, well, the right is becoming extreme. and that is the very dangerous thing, where they think that they don't see their own position in this whole puzzle. They just see the movement. They see that divide growing. And that makes them think, okay, they used to be more centrist, I guess would be the way to think. Now, if all of a sudden their position in their own minds hasn't changed, well, what happens is they think of these people on the right as being extreme right, being really far radical right, because the way that they perceive it is that movement. They see that movement, but they don't see their own observational position in that movement. They don't see that they have been the ones moving, not the other group. And this is what is creating all these kind of things where they, have punch a Nazi and, very extreme attitudes towards right-wing people. And that is a very dangerous thing. And I'm making this video not for right-wing people, which are the majority of my audience. I have to say, like, the majority of people that watch my videos are going to be right-wing because I'm right-wing. I'm honest about it. I'm a conservative. I believe in more right wing policies. But the funny thing is, I'm making this video for the left, and I really want to bridge that gap between these two groups because I really don't think having such a extreme separation is a good thing for a society. It's just when it gets too polarized, the society can collapse. There's just no common ground, and people all of a sudden start demonizing the other groups. And that's when really things kind of break down. And that's my fear. I don't want that to happen. So this has been my explanation of relativity and the political spectrum. And I see I'm trying to get into some of the dangers of it. And I want you to understand if you're on the left wing side of things, try to reorientate yourself. Try to look at what it is that, where was your stance 10, 20 years ago? And compare yourself now to that stance and see how you shifted. And maybe that can maybe give you some sense of maybe that the right hasn't shifted to the right. It's actually you've shifted more to the left. And you got to maybe become aware of your own political movement. Okay. So I'm hoping to bring some awareness within that community. And I hope this makes sense to everybody. And I'd love to hear your feedback. Do you agree with me? Has the left shifted more to the left, or has the right been the one that has made the shift to the extremes of right? And I'd love to hear your feedback on that. Thanks. Bye for now.